Home of the original Chicken George and Jan Sauce, dine-in, carry-out, and catering available. Located in Rock Falls and Sterling, Illinois, as well as Clinton, Iowa. Come try our original Chicken George today.
Need a roof, vinyl windows, or doors? Call R.E. Duchesne Construction. With an A-plus rating for the Better Business Bureau and servicing Will, Grundy, and Kendall counties, call R.E. Duchesne. 815-722-2821. Financing available. Find out more online at reduchene.com.
Are going to come right down to the wire. Yeah, he really likes this field. Team of the Week MVP.
I like Reich.
Since 2016, it's been my privilege to represent the people of the 63rd District. I want to continue representing you as an independent voice in Springfield.
I like Reich. We like Reich.
We're here to help you with your problems that result from an automobile accident or an injury on the job or the loss of a loved one. There's no reason you should go through this alone and guess that you're doing things right.
We deal with tragedies that affect families and individuals every day.
Come here and protect your interests. We've been doing this collectively for over 100 years. Let's put that experience to work for you.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back and welcome into the Friday Night Drive podcast. I am your host, Kyle Nabors, along with Steve Soucie. It is Thursday, November 16th. We are here to break down the state semifinals, and you got a new haircut on, Souce, buddy. How you doing?
Yeah, you gotta cut it a little bit close here because I wasn't liking the wildness that was going on the last couple of weeks. I took it way down. Yeah, I guess getting it right down to the base here.
I desperately need a haircut. I look like a hobo at this point, but I'm just rolling with it. Postseason, we'll get that taken care of. Thank you, everyone who is joining us live this morning. As I said, we're here to break down the state semifinals with you guys for the next half an hour or so. We're going to have Michael Dwojak on and Joe Stevenson in just a moment. Of course, you can find all of our content at FridayNightDrive.com. You can follow us on X and Twitter at FN Drive. You can also find Friday Night Drive on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. You can follow myself on Twitter at Kyle Nabors. You can find Souce on Twitter at the Souce. We're going to go all 8 classes with you guys today. But first, before we do, we're going to go ahead and bring Joe Stevenson on first and let him talk about Cary Grove and Lake Zurich, because that's Joe's game on Saturday afternoon. Joe, how you doing?
I am great. I have one of our local teams to cover in the semifinal, which we've kind of grown accustomed to. But, life's good.
Absolutely. You and I were over there on Saturday to watch Cary Grove in the state quarterfinals. I don't think we expected that outcome. I mean, we both expected Cary Grove to win. We did not expect there to be a running clock just a few minutes into the second half.
Right. I don't think anybody did. Even the Cary Grove people were kind of shocked. They're like, wow, I didn't see this coming. But the Trojans kind of took any potential drama out of that game early. Geneva has a nice drive going on its first drive, and safety Jack Roken comes up with the strip and the fumble recovery, and then 3 plays later, Andrew Prio does what he does and goes 56 yards, and then a few plays after that, CG defensive back PJ Weaver picks off a pass and runs it in, and it's 14-0 just like that, and it got ugly for Geneva from there. It was 34-0 at halftime. Really, really well done by Cary to punch that one more in right before halftime, and then gets the ball to start second half. And and goes up 41-0. Yeah, impressive.
I was talking to someone on the sideline at that point. I remember Cary Grove got the ball back with like
a minute 30 or something.
And I remembered that they had deferred to start the game, and I was like, man, if they score here, this is it's over.
Yeah.
And like Geneva, I remember looking over at halftime, and their kids were just kind of shell shocked. Like they were sitting around in circles. Some of them were laying on the ground. And Souce, I want to bring you in at this point because we had talked about, I think on Monday, I had posed the question about like Cary Grove, like where they rank in terms of top public schools. I'm going to flip it a little bit though. Cary Grove and PR running this triple option, right? I want to know, I feel like on a more consistent basis than other of these top programs in the state, and it's because of the triple option, right? Like they're playing teams that don't see it very often, but it almost amuses me, like how regularly, like you expect, okay, Cary Grove PR should win this game, and it'd be kind of close, and then all of a sudden they blow a team out the water, and then you have the realization, like, oh, they haven't seen a triple option all year.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It gets into kind of a, tricky thing to try to figure out what teams are most appropriately, I guess, set up to deal with this type of offense when they don't have much exposure to it. It's funny because, I think the farther you go down on the classification scale in terms of size, the more you see this.
Yeah.
You don't see a lot of upper classification teams. And it's always funny to talk to, small division coaches that are either defending against that regularly or using it themselves, watch teams that are completely inexperienced with dealing with it. It's almost like I don't want to say they're laughing at them, but they're like going, yeah, we've been dealing with this for 20 years, guys. We've at least got a better idea of what we're supposed to be doing here. So it's always interesting to look at that kind of dichotomy.
Yeah, Joe, that's what if you think back like that before the playoff started, you had talked with Prairie Ridge coach Chris Schremp about Naz, and he mentioned in that story about how Naz has spent all season, pass rushing, getting upfield, and if they do that against us, it's going to be a long day. Obviously, Naz won that game, but it's just an example, right? Like you got a great program like Naz. It's such a hard thing to defend when you don't see it on a regular basis.
Exactly. You always, and I did a story on it, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago. It was really it might have been longer than that. It was a really fun story. But Brad Seaberg at Cary and Chris Schremp at PR both always talk about how they prefer when there aren't a lot of teams that run the option. They kind of want to keep their little cult, so because it is so hard to defend, they don't want people to see it more often. So they kind of prefer when there are teams doing more throwing and not running that, because they do think it's a huge advantage.
Lake Zurich is another team that has not seen a lot of triple option. I'm not sure if Lake Zurich has seen the triple option at all this year, Souce.
Yeah, I don't think so. I'd have to look back at their non-conference schedule to be sure, but I don't believe anybody in their league uses it. So
I don't think so either. Joe, as you're going through this week preparing for this matchup, what are you hearing about it?
Well, you got two teams that really like to run the ball. Lake Zurich's going to run it a lot too. Their running back Chris Perrone has 1,233 rushing yards and 17 touchdowns. Brad Seaberg said they want to throw it when they want to throw it. They don't want other teams to dictate. So that, they'll pick their spots when they want to throw it. They'll throw it more than Cary will for sure. But they're primarily a running team. They're big up front. So I think this is going to be, it's a semifinal. It's going to be a fun game. Cary Grove's playing really well right now on both sides. I was thoroughly impressed with the Trojans' defense last week. 4 takeaways and 255 total yards. And that's an offense that was run by a Class 6A All-State quarterback in Nate Stempowski. So, I really like the way Cary's playing right now. And, you got Logan Abrams at fullback, the big guy running up the middle, and then Andrew Prio is just ridiculous. My favorite stats, well, his yards per carry on the season is 16.1, And Brad Seberg texted me the other day. Said, "I wonder what he is in the playoffs." So I figured it out. He's 22.2 per carry in the playoffs.
Well, that's
just crazy.
That number should have gone down a little bit on that first carry, or maybe I think it was the first carry in that game against Geneva, his first touch, where it looked like he was going to get tackled after about an 8 or 9 yard gain, and he somehow stepped out of that and spun away.
It was incredible. Yeah, it was like right at the line of scrimmage. It looked like the guy had his leg. He just spun, gets loose, and then you could just see the lane. And you're just like, uh-oh, here he goes. Here he goes again. And it's funny. I wrote a story on him a couple of weeks ago, and PJ Weaver, I wanted to talk to one of the defensive players. Okay, what's it like against this guy in practice? And he was talking about, the spin move. He's got this spin move. And we saw it, Kyle. We saw the spin move. And I just, as soon as he did it and broke loose, I kind of grinned. I was like, yeah, that's what he was talking about right there. Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
Souce, after seeing the way Cary Grove performed so far in this postseason, including the quarterfinals, Lake Zurich struggled to get by Belvedere North in the quarterfinals. All things considered, I have Cary Grove as a pretty heavy favorite in this matchup.
Well, I remember thinking back to like 3 weeks ago when we were looking at these brackets for the first time, that I thought that Cary Grove would have some challenges along this path where there would be some games where they would be pushed a little bit. And I thought they could very easily get to the semifinals, but I didn't think they would do it in the dominating fashion that they have. And it's caused me to kind of reevaluate like where they're at right now and who they are. And we talked about this a little bit on Monday. I have to keep reminding myself that this is a team that's currently 10-2, but they are so dangerously close to being a 12-0 football team. Like, and that just kind of changes your perspective there. So, I too believe that Cary Grove is a substantial favorite in this game, based not only on that, but the fact that Lake Zurich has really scuffled with some teams that I really didn't think they would. I mean, I thought they would not really have a lot of trouble last week, and that game was not decided until midway through the fourth quarter.
Joe, you making it a trifecta? You think Cary Grove is a pretty good favorite in this one?
I do. Lake Zurich, we're talking about two teams here that have both have really rich playoff traditions, and Lake Zurich playing in 6A for the first time. It's always been 7A before, but yeah, I would pick Cary Grove as well. Another thing I keep looking at, 15-1 in its last 16 playoff games is Cary Grove. The Trojans missed the playoffs last year. Had the 3-6. They graduated a lot from that 2021 state championship team, and then the guys that they did have coming back last year all seemed to get hurt. And they played pretty well in the first part of the season. Then they got all some of their best players hurt and really struggled. And now they've kind of come back and this is the Cary Grove that we're used to seeing.
All right, Joe, we'll let you go for now. Enjoy a nice afternoon in mid-November.
Yeah, it's going to be like about 50. It's going to be another beautiful day. I'm going to be digging it.
You going to take the dog out for a walk, or you already been out?
Oh, we already went out. Yeah, we went out for a run. It's beautiful out today.
Nice. All right. Well, we'll talk to you later, Joe.
Okay. See you guys.
All right. He is Joe Stevenson, who covers McHenry County for the Northwest Herald and FridayNightDrive.com. You can find him on Twitter at NWH_Joe Prep Zone. I see Jerry Miller checking in with us this morning. He says, surprise how easily they beat Geneva. And then Lake Zurich got the luck of the draw, Souce. I don't really agree that Lake Zurich got the luck of the draw. Going into this, on that north side of the bracket, it just was one of those years that felt really wide open. Don't you agree? Like, there was not a dominant team. Now, that being said, I think we've come to feel that the Trojans are that dominant team. But going into this, I didn't feel that way.
Yeah, I thought, kind of looking at this bracket and just kind of the overall look of it, I think Lake Zurich played some pretty good teams along their path. I think I can find a lot more instances that I think are more severe situations of teams getting the luck of the draw thrown their way. I look back to round 2. I thought that Canelan game was a fair matchup of two pretty good 6A programs that Lake Zurich won. But overall, I feel like Lake Zurich as a top seed and the situation that they were in, dropping down a class, I just kind of thought that they'd be a little bit more, I guess, forceful than they've been in the first 3 rounds of the playoffs at this point.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right, we're going to go ahead and bring Michael Dwojak on now, who covers the Chicago Catholic League for FridayNightDrive.com. Of course, if you're watching live with us this morning on Facebook or on YouTube, you can jump into the comment section and ask us a question or a comment, as Jerry did. We got a couple more in here already. And Jim says, Jim, a regular so far this postseason, said, "Good morning, guys. Please give your prediction in 5A when you can." So let's go ahead. We don't got to go in order. We can go wherever we want. It's our show, guys. 5A, starting on the north side there. Let's start with St. Francis and Nazareth. Michael, what are you thinking about that matchup? I think you're on mute, buddy. Oh, let's see.
First time. Here we go. I'm back. All right. What I really said was St. Francis is on a tear, aren't they, guys? Like, they are just playing elite football right now. Alessio is doing a great job at quarterback. They got a really pretty dominant defense. And Naz is doing the improbable right now, obviously starting the season 0-4 and trying to make it back to the state championship and trying to top themselves from last season. So this is one of the better matchups of this upcoming weekend. And I'm really curious to see, St. Francis beat them pretty easily in week 9. I was kind of surprised about that score when I saw it when it was happening to end the regular season. But I'm curious how much changes and, whether there's stuff that, maybe both coaching staffs were like, well, this could potentially happen. I don't know how much you really look into it that far in advance when you're trying to make the playoffs. But I'm curious to know how much is left, I guess, for both teams, and what doesn't the other team know about the other after playing against each other a month ago.
I completely agree with everything there, Seuss.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an interesting situation to look at. I got to see St. Francis live for the first time last week against Morgan Park, and I was really impressed with what they were able to do. It was kind of a sloppy game, but Morgan Park was kind of trying to force St. Francis out of what I think their comfort zone is, and it didn't really matter. The Spartans did a really, really nice job of kind of adapting to the opponent and doing a really good job of taking care of what they needed to make sure that they advanced. Didn't throw the ball downfield as much as they usually would like to against a very good and athletic Morgan Park secondary, but just found other ways to get it done. And I think that's what I like about this team. It doesn't seem like any situation really gives them too much pause. They just kind of go to work and do whatever they have to get it done. Look at the results down the stretch here. So many close games, so many games pulled out of the fire in the last minute of things. It's just a team that you can't really seem to rattle all that easily. And, Michael mentioned it about Nazareth, the unlikeliness of what they've been able to do in this situation. But I can't get away from that week 9 result so easily. And it wasn't that long ago. I mean, Wheaton St. Francis, pretty significant gap for Nazareth to try to make up. And not that much time has passed, and there really isn't that much of a personnel difference. So, I mean, from that perspective, I think I like Wheaton St. Francis to win this game.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing from that game was also like Naz needed to win that game in order to make the playoffs. Like, they had the playoff points and all that kind of stuff, but it's not like Naz was entering that game like, oh, like, we'll be fine, regardless. Like, they, and all intents and purposes, they felt like they needed to win that game, and St. Francis was able to control that game pretty easily. So that kind of tells you about, it wasn't as if both teams weren't trying, and St. Francis made it look pretty easy in that week 9 matchup.
On the south side of the bracket, you got two teams that are intimately familiar with each other, Providence and Joliet Catholic. They played back in week 2 with Joliet Catholic with a 19-0 win. Zeus. Providence is playing much better as of late, though.
Yeah, I mean, you got to go all the way back to week 2 to talk about that. And both of these football teams are significantly different than they were back then. And I will say, for the record, I mean, that was one of the uglier games I've seen this year. I mean, it just really was. And Providence was really, really struggling on offense. They've kind of been erratic all season, but when they've needed it, they find ways to score. It might not be on offense. It might be from the defense. It might be the special team setting up a play, or one of those two units giving the offense great opportunity to score. I saw them in the round 1 of the playoffs. They forced 6 turnovers, got multiple stops on 4th down to get the ball back. I mean, they just have a playoff knack, I guess is the best way that I can describe it, of putting their best foot forward when they have to and doing whatever it takes to squeeze out victories. This is a repeat scenario of what we had last year. I mean, Joliet Catholic played Providence twice last year, too, won the regular season game rather handily, turned around in the playoffs. Providence won the game and did it in a somewhat unorthodox fashion. So this is a game that I think both sides are very excited to play, but both sides are leery of the other one for various reasons.
Suze, I haven't seen your Class 5A prediction, which, by the way, everyone, you can go to FridayNightDrive.com between now and kickoff on Saturday. We're posting Suze's predictions for all 8 classes. Suze, who are you taking in Providence and Joliet Catholic?
You know, I took Joliet Catholic in this game, but of many games this week where I could easily be proven wrong, this is one where I think that this game could go a whole bunch of different directions, and there aren't very many of them that would surprise me. But I really think Joliet Catholic, especially on the offensive side of the ball, they seem to have found something the last couple of weeks. They have really, really kind of dug their heels in it and leaned on that power running game and done a nice job.
All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and move over to Class 3A where Josh has a question. Do you think Montini will be able to slow down the Byron Tiger offense? Michael, I'll start with you. What do you think?
I feel like I'm going to be, a broken record at this point talking about, CCL, ESCC teams playing against each other. But I do think that experience kind of plays a factor here. And having, Byron is just putting up ridiculous numbers all season long. They offensively are just able to do whatever they want, and they're also able to do whatever they want defensively. I'm just kind of curious to see, has the Byron team played a team like Montini, and Montini who, I know you're all going to get tired of me or roll your eyes at me about like who Montini has played in the CCL, ESCC, but I do think that matters. So I'm really curious to see, that defense, gave trouble to a lot of good teams this season for Montini. And I think that can happen again here with Byron. So obviously I know Byron has multiple playmakers, and it's not like they just have one guy who's like kind of doing everything. Like they even have 2 quarterbacks who are kind of taking the role there. But I do think that based on what we've seen from Montini this season, I don't think I'm definitely, confident that, Byron's not going to put up the numbers that it's been putting up all season. And I'm very curious to see whether that's the difference in this game here.
Suze, what do you think?
Obviously, I don't think Byron's going to score 60 points in this game like they've regularly been scoring. But I was very impressed with them in the one time that I saw them live. I do think that this is a game where, I echo a lot of the things that Michael was saying there, but I also think that Byron is kind of a unique animal in running this. They do it so very, very well that even though I know Montini's seen some variant of it during the season, I don't know if they've seen someone do it as well as Byron does it. And I've been a little bit of pause with how some of the previous round games for Montini maybe haven't gone real smooth. Like I thought that they would win some of these earlier round games in a little bit more dominating fashion. So, if this game comes down to like a possession or two, I'd lean towards Byron because they have that ability to say, okay, we're going to put it on the ground. We're going to play 4-down football if we have to. They're very comfortable in that realm. And we'll put together a 15-play drive on you where we take 3 yards a chunk. And they don't make mistakes. They almost never turn the football over. I saw their stats earlier this year. It's ridiculous. They turn the ball over maybe like once every 3 games. It's ridiculous. So this is a fascinating game on paper. I picked Byron to win the game, and I'm sticking with that. I think they are going to win this game.
I agree. I think Byron wins this game as well. I will say a terrific bounce back year for Montini coming off that 3-6 campaign. Definitely should be in this one. Byron's playing so well. It's just a well-oiled machine right now. I have a hard time thinking that Montini is going to be able to close that gap. Suze, on the south side of that bracket, Mount Carmel and Roxana. You got some thoughts for us on that one?
It's interesting. I've always been a big fan of the Mount Carmel program. They do a really nice job down there. A huge fan of their home stadium, by the way. It's one of my favorites in the state of Illinois. The Snake Pit is what they call it. But a really strong program, consistently gets it done, finds itself in this stage of the tournament quite often. Quarterfinal, semifinal, this type of team every year. On the opposite side of the spectrum, we've got Roxana here, which is a team that has kind of came out of nowhere, but everyone that I've talked to down there about them tells me about the firepower of this team and how good they are. And these are guys that, have seen this level of football and understand what it takes to be successful at this stage. I think this is going to be a wild game. I think this is going to be one of those where there's a lot of points scored. It becomes a very, very interesting situation to look at. Roxana hasn't been to the semifinals since 1987. So obviously they're not used to this type of specter on what's going on. Nobody in the program certainly is. But I think this is a really fun one. It's under the radar, but I think it's a really fun semifinal game.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone who is joining us live this morning on YouTube and Facebook and jumping into the comment section. We appreciate that very much. Jacob says 8A predictions next. Let's go down there, guys. Class 8A. Let's start on that north side with York and Loyola. Michael, what are you hearing about Loyola going into this one?
I mean, Loyola's dominating, guys. They just have not looked weak at all season. Mount Carmel gave them their toughest test of the season, and Mount Carmel needed to come back to a fairly decent halftime deficit. I mean, Loyola's just loaded at every position they want to be loaded at. Their quarterback has come in, Ryan Fitzgerald. He's doing a great job. They're running the ball. They're able to pass the ball to 10 different guys, and it doesn't matter who you're throwing the ball to. They're going to end up, catching big plays, and that defense is just elite. I mean, I know obviously Lincoln Way East defense is also elite, and if we get that matchup, that's going to be great football to end things off at Thanksgiving weekend. But everything about this Loyola team has just been, there hasn't been any flaws in what we've seen from Loyola, and it's kind of hard to doubt this team when they haven't really given you a reason to doubt them. So I know, talking with them after, they blew out St. Ignatius, they know York's going to come into this game wanting revenge for last season and, trying to get back to the state championship. But Loyola's treating it the way they've treated every single week. They're trying to get back to the state championship. They're trying to win another 8A title. And I don't really see any reason why Loyola wouldn't be heavily favored in this matchup here.
Yeah, I think the Ramblers are a pretty substantial favorite. On the other side of the bracket, Barrington and Lincoln Way East. Maybe not as substantial the favorite Lincoln Way East over Barrington as Loyola over York, Seuss. I'm going to go ahead, though. I'm going to pick the upset in this one. I'm taking Barrington, Seuss. I think the way the Barrington offense is playing right now, I really like what I see. I think if the Broncos can get a lead in this one early against Lincoln Way East, that they can maybe run away isn't the right word for it. I just don't know if the Lincoln Way East offense can put up a lot of points in a game.
Well, I don't think anybody's going to run away from Lincoln Way East. I know you just backed away from that a little bit, but I think, in order to beat Lincoln Way East, you're going to have to score 3 to 4 touchdowns on them.
Yep.
That's what it's going to take. And I have seen no evidence that anybody can do that yet. That argument might change if it is a Loyola Lincoln Way East rematch in the state final. But I think this defense is gotten a lot of credit. I don't know if it's gotten the level of credit it deserves. It is really, really good, especially that front four. They cause all kinds of problems. Their linebacking core is extremely solid, and it's a very good secondary, too. They don't really have a lot of spots where you can try to pick on them. So, I watched the Barrington game on television last week. We saw them for a little while time before. They do have some offensive weapons, but I also think that the offensive displays that they've put up over the last couple of weeks have been against defenses that are not nearly as good as Lincoln Way East.
Yeah,
the sledding is not going to be as easy. I mean, they made offense look really easy last week against Maine South. They did. They were the big plays seemingly all the time, all these other things. Just, I can count on one hand the amount of big plays Lincoln Way East gives up. They just don't do it. So, offensively, this is not as a high-octane team as Lincoln Way East has had in the past. I don't think they really have that explosive playmaker that's just going to break open a game for you. But it's a different type of Lincoln Way East. They wisely put their fate in the hands of that defense, and that defense has not let them down. So I can see a path to how Barrington wins. I just don't know if they can thread that needle.
Chai Bears checking in here says, FYI, I am pretty sure that Belvedere North ran the triple option. That should have been a sneak peek for the Lake Zurich defense to warm up with. Thanks for that info there, Chai Bears. Let's see, guys. We've gone through 8A. While we're here, let's talk 7A. Starting on the south side of the bracket there, we get another matchup between Batavia and Mount Carmel. Michael, what are you hearing here?
Obviously, both sides are looking forward to this matchup. Probably the game of the weekend. Obviously, a 7A state title rematch after last season. Mount Carmel, just took care of business against Batavia to win that state title. I'm sure that, Batavia is coming in with a lot of energy, and they, have looked great the entire season. I mean, their lone loss was a 1-point loss to Lincoln Way East. Mount Carmel's lone loss was a 2-point loss to Loyola. Obviously, two of the top 3 teams in the state. So both of these teams are battle tested. Both of these teams have seen it all. I just think that Mount Carmel has kind of seen it a little bit more. They beat East St. Louis to start the season. They were a 2-point conversion away from, tying Loyola late in their game. So, and especially since the game is at Mount Carmel, there's something, cool about, playing at their new stadium. Now you got the video board going, you got the intros and all that kind of stuff playing on the south side. It's a very unique environment, kind of different from anything else you've seen in the state so far with what they've been able to invest into their program. So, I think it's a close game. I'm not saying that Mount Carmel is going to blow up Batavia by any means. It probably comes down to a field goal or something like that. But I think with everything that Mount Carmel's seeing, the physicality that they play with, and the fact that it's a home game for them on Saturday afternoon, I just think that everything kind of points toward Mount Carmel squeaking away into this one and heading back down to Bloomington Normal.
Between that matchup, which is absolutely fantastic. It is my favorite game of the weekend. Between that, Souce, and the other matchup on the other side, Normal Community in Downers Grove North, Class 7A is my favorite class to watch this weekend.
Yeah, going back to a little bit to that Batavia Mount Carmel conversation, since the day the brackets came out, I genuinely felt the only team that could potentially beat Mount Carmel was Batavia. So I was kind of hoping that they would be on the opposite sides of the bracket so we could culminate this in a state championship game. But I still think, for Mount Carmel to lose that game, Batavia's going to have to capitalize on a mistake or two that Mount Carmel might make. I still think they're a favorite in that game. And on the top side of that bracket, each week I get more and more intrigued by this Downers Grove North team. They have done a remarkable job in the postseason of just kind of running right through people. So it's definitely, and Normal Community's just kind of been a wild adventure in the postseason. They had the overtime game with Bradley Bourbonnais in round 2, a wild back and forth game with Glenbard East in round 3. So it's definitely a setup that is, intriguing.
Adam says joining late here, so you might have mentioned it, but is there a matchup that you just can't get a read on who wins? To me, I think that's either game in Class 7A. I think Batavia is really close to Mount Carmel here. I really do. But overall, the number one game for me, Adam, is Normal Community versus Downer Grove North. I have a real tough time with that one. Souce, how about you?
I think the one that's most interesting to me right now is the 2A game between Maroa Forsyth and Wilmington. It's kind of a contrast in styles. You've got a high octane offensive team in Maroa that likes to throw the football, can move it both ways. More of a defensive-based ground game offense in Wilmington. For me, that kind of comes down to who can limit the big play and who can limit those mistakes. But like on paper, I can make an argument for both of those teams that I think is pretty convincing that they'll win that game. So for me, that's the one.
How about you, Michael? You got one that's been hard to pick?
I think it probably would. I know I said Mount Carmel's probably going to win that game, but I do think that Batavia Mount Carmel game is probably the closest game of the weekend with everything that's going on. You got a lot of great matchups to the semifinal weekend, but if there's a game that probably feels like a state championship, it's probably that Mount Carmel Batavia game.
We got one more Catholic League team that we haven't hit on, and that's 4A here. So let's do that before we let Michael go. Make sure you follow Michael on Twitter at mdwojak94. You can also find him on Threads and Instagram. Michael, you got Wheaton Academy going to number 6, St. Lawrence. St. Lawrence is a team, I'd say a bit of a surprise to see here with the upset win over IC Catholic last week. I think both Soucie and I at this point think, though, St. Lawrence, we both feel that they have the favorite to go to state.
Yeah, I mean, heading into this season, talking with Coach Adam Neeson, he talked about, we've got a pretty, senior heavy group here. We've built it all the way up ever since he took over in 2019 with the freshmen getting a lot of time in and that kind of stuff. And obviously that's been great for them this year. Aaron Ball's doing great stuff at running back for them. Evan Less has shown that he can really throw and run the ball at quarterback for them. And it's funny because Neeson talked about how, every time, someone, we're getting picked to play in a game and that kind of stuff, everyone else picks against them. And I don't really see a reason how you can really pick against St. Lawrence at this point. They've put it together. They've gone through the experiences of playing against some of the tougher teams. Their losses have come against teams like St. Rita, who also made the playoffs. They beat Providence earlier in the season. So, St. Lawrence has the battle scars and has been through it. And I think, Wheaton Academy, I know they're probably annoyed with me a couple weeks ago, and I said St. Viator would probably beat them because of their, schedule and that kind of stuff. But I do think that kind of comes into fruition here with St. Lawrence kind of just going through it. They have shown, they can beat a lot of the better teams especially in 4A. So I don't really see a reason why you wouldn't pick against St. Lawrence. You would choose against St. Lawrence here. They've just seemed to put it together really well offensively, and that defense is playing pretty well too, just enough to maybe get them into the state championship game.
All right, he is Michael Dwojak. One more time, you can follow him on Twitter at mdwojak94 and on Threads and Instagram. Michael, thanks for joining us this morning.
All right, see you guys.
All right, later. All right, Soucie, before we go down, we got 2 classes left to hit on, 1A and 2A down there. We got really quickly that 4A matchup against Rochester at Murfreesboro. You got anything on that?
Firepower in this situation. Murfreesboro, I don't know if you saw it, Kyle, but they won their game last week on a last second, basically desperation touchdown pass from about 30 yards out, where the receiver kind of danced in the end zone and scored that play. So they've kind of been ducking and darting their way through this postseason field to this point. I don't think they'll be fortunate enough to have a situation where that can be repeated against this Rochester team that is just, I think, really, really good on offense. But the thing that kind of gets lost in the shuffle is, and I've heard Coach Leonard say this over the course of the season, this is one of their better defensive units. So when you combine a really, really good defense with the high octane offense that they usually bring to the field, that's kind of a nasty combination. So Rochester, I think, is a substantial favorite in this one.
Yeah. All right. We got 2 classes left. If you are joining us live on Facebook and YouTube and we haven't hit a question that you guys or comment that you would like us to address, jump into the chat for the next few minutes here before we sign off. Going back up top, Soucie, run us through these 2 matchups in Class 1A. What are you thinking?
Lena Winslow and Hope Academy creates an interesting situation. Hope Academy has gotten a lot of, exciting stories about them, about what they can do and stuff like that. But boy, Lena Winslow is just a freight train. They're so good at what they do. And if you look back at kind of Hope Academy's postseason history, and I know that doesn't speak for everything, but they have had a heck of a lot of time, a hard time dealing with these NUIC teams in the postseason, and Lena Winslow is the gold standard. So, I'd be really, really surprised if it's not Lena Winslow coming out of the top side of that draw. And it feels kind of silly talking about it now in this respect because, and like I said, I took the loss. I took my L on Monday with Belleville Altoff and Camp Point Central, but Camp Point Central and Greenfield are in the same conference. They don't play each other in the regular season. They do not line up as crossover games. They're in different divisions. But Camp Point Central, when they have played, has kind of dominated the series over the last couple of weeks. And I think they're a substantial favorite in this one.
Looking like we're things can always go sideways, but we're going to get another matchup between Lena Winslow and Camp Point Central for a state title game. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it sure looks like that. And I think that, kind of what happened in that state championship game last year between the two, I think if Camp Point Central can put a better foot down to start the game, we might have a little bit more of an interesting adventure than we did last year. Because, this is a talented team. There's no doubt about that. A lot of team speed, can do some things that maybe Lena Winslow might have trouble with. So, I think that would be a potentially, despite the fact that we already saw it last year in some respects, I think it would be worth doing again. Let's put it that way.
All right, we already hit on the Monroe-Forsyth-Wilmington game. We got Athens at Shelbyville on the bottom side of the bracket there, Seuss, and I'm going to need you to include at least 6 Simpsons references in your breakdown on this one.
I don't know. It's one of those things where, I wonder how the Isotopes would do in this matchup. But okay, I'm going to leave it alone. But that's basically it's kind of an interesting game here in the sense of, it's been kind of a hard feel for both of these two teams. Athens played a much better schedule. They're from the Sangamo Conference. Their losses this season have come to pretty good teams. Shelbyville is still kind of an unknown here. Marched right through the Central Illinois Conference, very little problems. They had a good year last year, not a great year. So getting them to this stage is a little bit of a surprise. I just kind of lean back on like what I was talking about a little bit on Monday. Shelbyville and Nashville played in week 9 of the regular season, and Nashville absolutely took them apart. They won by a comfortable margin. Athens and Nashville played last week in the playoffs, and, Athens edged out Nashville. So that's just kind of using the transitive property there. That's kind of the way I go here. Potentially could have, if Monroe-Forsyth wins on the top, a Sangamo Conference final. One team against another, which is in the north-south environment, I believe will be either the first or the second time that's happened where there have been 2 teams from the same conference. And I'm not talking about mega conferences. I'm talking about conferences that have, a maximum of 10 to 12 teams. That we would have 2 teams that, played in the same conference during the regular season, facing off for a state championship. So that's an interesting little side note that could potentially be developed.
All right, Seuss, we got to get out of here, but it is looking like an absolutely gorgeous Saturday of high school football for the state semifinals. I can't wait to get out there. I'm going to be over watching Cary Grove and Lake Zurich. Where are you going on Saturday?
I still have not nailed down what I'm going to do prior to the game that I'm covering. I've been wrestling with it for a while. I think, to be honest with you, I'm going to end up at the first half of the Lincoln Way East Barrington game. I'm going to catch that and then hop over on Wilmington Peatone Road. It's about a half an hour away from there, and try to find a parking spot within about 2 miles of the field for Wilmington and Monroe-Forsyth. So I think that is my tentative game plan, but I reserve the right to get up on Saturday morning and decide to change that too. So definitely there's always, it seems like every year we have a situation in the semifinals where we have multiple games where you're thinking to yourself, boy, this would be a good state championship game. And I think we've got a whole bunch of them this week that are leading into where you have that conversation after the game where this was probably the true state championship game. I think there's actually merit to several of those conversations this year.
He is Steve Soucie. You can find him on Twitter at the Souce. You can find myself on Twitter at Kyle Nabors. And of course, you can find all of our content at FridayNightDrive.com. We are going to sign off now, though. Make sure you stick to FridayNightDrive.com all weekend long. We'll have complete coverage of the state semifinals for you, and then we'll be back on Monday morning right here on YouTube and Facebook to break down everything that happened this weekend. Everyone enjoy the weekend. We'll talk to you guys next week.
Come to Candlelight Inn, home of the original Chicken George and Jan Sauce. Dine in, carry out, and catering available. Located in Rock Falls and Sterling, Illinois, as well as Clinton, Iowa. Come try our original Chicken George today.
Need a roof, vinyl windows, or doors? Call R.E. Duchesne Construction. With an A-plus rating from the Better Business Bureau and servicing Will, Grundy, and Kendall counties, call R.E. Duchesne. 815-722-2821. Financing available. Find out more online at reduchene.com.
Are going to come right down to the wire.
Yeah, he really likes this field.
Team of the Week MVP.
I like Reich.
I like Reich.
Since 2016, it's been my privilege to represent the people of the 63rd District. I want to continue representing you as an independent voice in Springfield.
I like Reich. We like Reich.
We're here to help you with your problems that result from an automobile accident or an injury on the job or the loss of a loved one. There's no reason you should go through this alone and guess that you're doing things right.
We deal with tragedies that affect families and individuals every day.
Come here and protect your interest. We've been doing this collectively for over 100 years. Let's put that experience to work for you.